Education Centre over in London, in the London borough of Lambeth in Brixton, to attend the Health and Wellbeing event run by the Africa Advocacy Foundation, or AAF, and the Community Therapies and Training Services, otherwise known as CCTS. Now, this event was also done with the help of the Rafiki project and Safer. And this event featured discussions, presentations and art exhibitions, plus poetry. The event was educational and informative on a range of health topics, being mental health, HIV and female genital mutilation. Plus the groundbreaking theatre play in education, and this was performed by a group of young actors, and the play was titled Are You Positive? Now, before I go into more details on the event, let's get a little info about the Africa Advocacy Foundation. Now, the Africa Advocacy Foundation is a community-based charity that promotes better health, education and other life opportunities for disadvantaged people. The AAF has over 16 years of experience of supporting disadvantaged individuals and families from diverse communities in London. Now, they work with a range of local partners, service providers, professionals, communities and funders to deliver appropriate and timely intervention for their beneficiaries. You can check out their website for more info, and that is basically www.a-af.org. How about the Community Therapies and Training Services, otherwise known as CTTS, which their site is www.ctts.org.uk. Basically, they are a registered social enterprise based in London, UK, and they offer community-based, focused support to individuals, families and communities who are experiencing life difficulties, health problems or mental health problems. Now, they offer talking therapies, community development and social empowerment models to help people feel better, happier and lead fulfilled lives. They also support family members, carers, friends and organisations who have a supportive role in the lives of people who are experiencing life difficulties, health problems or, as I said before, mental health problems. Now, being that I'm a carer myself, I certainly wanted to find out a lot more on how this event would turn out. So let's get to it. Let's have a closer look at the event throughout this blog. Now, as I walked into the centre, I was greeted friendly by a staff member who signed me in. I didn't meet my friend Naomi Bali. I hope I've got her surname right. I usually tend not to. Probably refer to her as Naomi. And she was basically placing some more leaflets down, and she also was very happy to see me. I took a look at the stalls, and each stall was filled with a large array of health and well-being leaflets, all educational. Naomi introduced me to Claire Walsh, who is the Time to Change Communication Officer. It was exciting to meet such a representative there. And for those who do not know, Time to Change is an anti-stigma campaign run by the leading mental health charities Mind and Rethink Mental Illness. Now, I've run a video blog on their campaign, which is called Time to Talk. As the event started, we then got the event's cheers welcome from the director of the West African Networking Initiatives, and his name is Sam Robbie Cocker, and he felt that it was great to see so many here at the event. Sam talked about why the AAF is set up, and plus he felt knowledge is power, and education and health will be exchanged on the day. He felt that it was so important to get education and get good health. Sam then talked about the event agenda being very rewarding on that day. I would like to remind you that Sam was the chair of the event. We then got the opening remarks from the lovely Anjis Bazawi, who is the CEO of the Africa Africa Advocacy Foundation, and she asked each person to stand up and give an introduction of who they are. And I also gave a talk of the slams, that's basically South London and Maudsley user-led blog called Slam Twigops. Someone talked about the Rafiki project and how they were involved in that project, and I'll get to that in a moment. And others were from other organisations. I remember one of them being Certitude, and I'll speak about that later on throughout this blog. Sam then spoke again with such good advice, and he mentioned that to remember to keep in contact with those at the event. He felt that it's best not to just go away and forget about us. He was basically saying, don't forget about the organisations here. He also stated that most health problems should not be feared, but be understood. And again, we must exchange ideas and knowledge, especially as a community. Now, our first speaker was Abdi Yousaf, who presented on the effects of TB on African migrants in London. Now, Abdi is from the New Bridge Development Association. He spoke about the effects of TB in the Somalian community, and he's also a researcher. The use of the slides show how the event actually covers health and well-being, and Abdi showed quite a few slides. Abdi spoke about the effects of TB when our immune system goes down. He talked about stigma in the community, and he talked about how Lambeth, Lewisham and Streatham has been set up in providing services which needs to be shared, and there is some failure of health service groups to share this info, and at least he was honest to admit this. There seems to be, Abdi mentioned that there seems to be a mistrust within the Somali communities about the health services. He mentioned that HIV, AIDS and TB linked causes of perceptions of failing to be tested. People who may have TB might think they have actually AIDS, which isn't the case. In Abdi's research, he interviewed the Somali community of their perception on TB, and he felt it was basically a mountain to climb in raising awareness on TB, but he'll keep trying. I asked him a question about how many people did he interview in the community, and he says it's around about 15, within a range of a diverse range of men and women, young and old, just to get a good representation of those he was interviewing. Someone else asked, how did you produce the stats? And he did produce the stats of his research, but it was more of a qualitative research rather than a quantitative. And what I mean by those two is qualitative looks at the experience of those putting their views within being interviewed at that research, while quantitative looks at stats and numbers of those affected. That's a way of proving or trying to prove that something has taken place, and a lot of organisations tend to move on to quantitative research. But Abdi did say that it was not so easy to produce because he felt that he wanted to hear the voices. So he felt it's best that evidence he wanted that type of evidence for a number of reasons. The health service, he did mention, did prefer quantitative rather than qualitative. And another good question was, is this a common health problem for the Somali community? And he mentioned this was a good question. He knew some people who died of TB, plus were having non-compliance of medication. Somalis are some of the communities in the UK. Many communities actually are affected by TB as well, so it's not only the Somalis. Next we had a talk by my friend Naomi, who is the CEO of the community therapies and training services. Now, Naomi talked about the Rafiki project, and again, she asked the audience to stand up, and she asked a couple of questions to see how many were left standing. And she actually asked the audience who here was happy every moment of the last week. And I don't think anyone sat down. Plus, she asked another one saying, has anyone lost someone in their lives but felt it had not impacted their life? And the last one she asked is there anyone of you here who have actually have not experienced a mental health problem in their life? And surprising, as you can guess, I don't think many people sat down, but it just goes to show what Naomi is trying to tackle, what the community therapies and training services are trying to tackle, and what the Rafiki project is about. And I'll go into that just a bit more. Although I'd like to say that I like the way she actually asked for the audience participation. However, what Naomi was getting at was health difficulties, especially mental health, was quite common, although not centering on the chronic mental health. Naomi then asked for 4 young volunteers to help give out post-it notes. What I mean by post-it notes is just small sticky notes that you could write things on. And she asked us to write down words on what we think about mental health and where would we go to get support from on mental health problems. And we all thought for a bit about mental health, where some in the audience may not have actually have been challenged to think about mental health before. Naomi's little helpers got a present, which one kindly posed for a picture. Naomi then talked about the Rafiki project and how it is linked to Time to Change, hence Claire Walsh being there. The Rafiki project has some ideas, but felt we all need to talk about our health even more. We also need to combat distress and stigma. So then the big question is, what is the Rafiki project all about? This project is an exciting new project, fairly new project. I think it's been around for a bit now. Developing to basically start conversations with African and Caribbean communities in Southeast London about mental health. Now they've embarked on recruiting and training 50 community champions so far from African communities. And I think some are still undergoing training to spearhead community engagement and mental health awareness activities through art, poetry and music, community outreach, and work with faith communities. Now they carry out different activities to engage people in conversation about mental health. And these include, as I said, outreach to public places, attending prayer group meetings, resource distribution, as well as their weekly peer support groups aimed at providing a space for the community champions to share their experiences and support each other. Now you can check out the Rafiki Project's website, which is therafiki.wordpress.com. Now I took the time to ask Naomi a question. I don't think most people would have asked this, and I asked basically what have they done so far of the Rafiki Project since the last time that I came to an event where the Rafiki Project was presenting on what they have been doing. And she replied that they have been still training some champions, trained around as usually up to 50 people or more, and they've had good work from the poetry workshop. Plus they're working with Rethink on a campaign, and also there are leaflets on the side at the event. I had a look through them, explaining a bit more about the project. They also got out and shared their stories within the community, especially on mental health, and they sit on various boards and work across South, Southeast and North London. And as you can guess, that's quite a handful for anyone in a project doing this. Now Sam Robin then introduced Amy Friapong, who is the founder of Changing Chapters, and I'd just like to mention that if I get the names sort of wrong, it's not on purpose. I'm not so good with names or saying names sometimes. Now, Amy, she talked about supporting young people to overcome grief and loss, and this is something that I felt quite close to in some sense, because I would prefer young people given the opportunity to speak up about health and well-being, and especially mental health problems, because I do feel that young people do not get that support. And that's my own views. That support is fairly limited. Well, anyway, Amy felt that there were problems discussing things on what children go through with adults. She felt that adults get support on bereavement, but this is not always the case with children or young people. Basically, the project is about engaging with young people about grief, about loss. Amy feels that young people may miss out on support, and this affects them when they get older. And I agree with this. We then had a discussion in the audience, in the group, about loss and about the other issues about loss and retirement, and basically what affects, what causes us to perhaps grieve or feel that there's loss. And we were asked in this audience, what do we think about that? And some people said, well, yeah, loss could be experienced as something where you're retiring, or when there's a relationship breakdown, or when the changes are big enough to impact our lives. Someone also mentioned miscarriage is a form of loss. We were given stories, just one-page stories to go through and discuss this in small groups. I think there was groups about probably 7. It was great because it just shows that there was more interaction, and we got to share our views between each others, and it was also a way of networking with each others and hearing what each person had to say. We then got feedback from each group, and I'll just probably pick out a few on what people felt about each of the stories. These stories were about people experiencing loss, by the way. Now, the feedback was basically, I think from one group, they felt that there was loss of love and abandonment, and a failure of suicide led to more grief. Others felt that loss was a suppression or failure. Some felt that depression, stress, being still locked away from the community, or isolated at home with no love from parents and no closure on certain things, was a form of loss, very difficult loss. Loss of confidence from the person within the story. Relationship problems with the family caused more loss. And another group reported back that they agreed with what the similar group said before, but also felt that within that story, that person had been adopted, and that their parents wasn't their real parents. Amy spoke again on how the BME community does not seem to engage as much as they should on their emotions, and as you probably noticed about this event, there's quite a large number of BME people there, BME being black, minority ethnic. Children tend to feel that how they could cope with loss is through fantasy. She felt that we need volunteers to be pioneers for change. We want less of our children to end up in mental health institutions. Next we heard from Shady Phillips, who runs a poetry group for the Rafiki project, and with her permission I recorded 2 of her poems.
A heavy burden and plight. Our mind prepares us for a fight. Stay strong, my friends. Be brave and proud. You'll find that lining at the end of that cloud. With positive thoughts, with a child's heart, your journey through life won't always be dark. Your karma is good, it's beautiful. Feeling well is a state of mind which suits you.
And I was wondering if do you actually like them? And I feel they were very creative and also very healing. And the poetry group, I believe it runs in Lewisham, Check off the Rafiki Project's website to see what times that poetry group runs. Next we heard from Advocacy, who is the community development worker from Certitude, and remember that I mentioned them before. And she talked about improving well-being in diverse communities. And Bessit talked about someone who was in distress and actually talked to her. Basically she was just talking to someone a while back who was in distress. And this person mentioned that her job was over, and this led to her having a nervous breakdown. And this was a great lead up on what we do to look after our own well-being. And she posed this question to us: what would you do to look after your own well-being? And someone from the audience felt that eating well, socializing, and exercise all helps. But others felt differently about this. Another person felt that we need money in order to make us happy. Money is the big factor. Money is basically what drives the world. Another person felt that perhaps that's not the case. More money makes more problems. It's the things that are free is what we need to appreciate. Someone else felt that we should live in the present, not in the past or the future, but in the present, noticing that we are alive. Another person felt that it was a mixture of things: money, food, happiness. Those are the things that can help and aid in our well-being. Another person felt that there was not enough community spaces to meet and do social things. And these are the things, these community spaces are what can create the happiness and decrease the isolation. Everyone these days is living in fear. Someone else says money does not equal happiness. He felt that he'd been to places where people are very poor, but they're happy. He feels many millionaires and billionaires are not happy. What this points to, he felt, is that you need structure in your life. Someone actually agreed and said, look, there's this thing called Maslow's principles, which is, I think it's like a triangle, and these are all pointing to what a person needs in order to be happy. And lastly we had someone saying that, look, there's around about 9 things that can make you happy, and she chose 3 things that were close to her in order to make her happy. Hence grace, as in forgiveness; charity, being useful to others so we feel useful; and love, as in charity, is given to others without expecting anything in return, otherwise we'll end up feeling hurt. All the things the audience spoke about were great ideas and showed again that there was more engagement and hearing and listening to those who are in the audience. We then had a short break and some networking. It was only about a 5-minute break, I believe, 5 to 10 minutes, and then after that we were shown quite an interesting play. It was a hard-hitting, that's the word. The play which featured Sharon Mackenzie, and there was also a few others there, 2 other actors who I'm afraid I didn't get their names. The play was called Are You Positive?, which is a theatre in an education play. Note the key word, education. First we were given some startling facts about AIDS, which is hitting many communities, and it's especially important to educate BME communities in London. I'm not saying that other communities don't get hit by this, but I feel we need to also educate BME, who may not always get education in health matters. Now, we do not hear much about AIDS, but why? It's not receding. Since 2003, 4.8 million people are infected by the HIV virus. It's not under control. 500,000 children die from AIDS. Is the world losing the race against the AIDS virus? Now, as I mentioned before, the play consisted of 3 people who each spoke about their scenario in regards to this difficult and terrible disease. The first scenario was about a girl who was in a relationship with a boyfriend named Scott. She tells us that her first kiss with him was amazing, and from that moment everything changed. They were never apart, always together with each other, in love. One thing led to another. Although they used birth control, this made her feel safe. She then mentioned that her boyfriend Scott and his friend David, and these are not real names, these were just names within the play. But anyway, her boyfriend Scott and David used to go out. She never heard from them. They used to go socialise, go to different places, camping trips. Then one day she noticed David is losing weight. He was not speaking much, and even worse, after a visit to the doctor, he hardly spoke at all. Months went by. Then she met her boyfriend Scott again. She was actually told that David had AIDS, Scott's friend. The thing is, it spread to Scott. Scott was concerned and asked her to get tested, and this alarmed and upset her. David died on her birthday. And what did she do? She will get tested. But is she positive? She's positive. You see, we need to learn more about the virus. The number of people living with this disease is increasing. Health services are struggling, and we must spread the message. 24 million people have died since 1981. Teenagers are cynical, but the stats show why they should not be. Now, from what I remember and noted from this play, I'll quickly go through the other 2 scenarios, not only because they are great plays, it's just I want to get this message across, because I know, unfortunately, someone who could listen to this message may affect their life decisions. The next story is a lad who has been arguing ever since with his dad over things. The young man was actually charged with possession, and his dad had given him some warnings on how one thing can lead to another. However, he felt that his dad's drinking is no better compared to his marijuana, which is basically what the young man was caught with. Well, one day he was curious. I mean, it was available, and he thought he might as well just try. He could have stopped any time he wanted to, but he didn't. He talked about the needles, and the first time he used it, and this after all was a party. It was an all-night long party. He was positive that he was invincible and in control, at least he thought so. I mean, he only had a few girlfriends, and he always used protection. Then, one day, he got sick. First, he thought it was just run down until he met the doctor, who asked him some frank questions. He felt scared. He was tested. He was positive. Tested again, and even more positive. He was almost always careful with sex partners, but it was the needles. It was always the needles, and he wondered how could he tell his family. He felt relieved that the doctor gave him a list of organizations that could help him. The medication was difficult because he has to take them every day. It was his choices. He felt he brought this all about. He was just a cocky teenager with everything. If he could just start again, he would. But is he positive? We need to be smart and learn. Since 1987 to 1990, HIV has almost doubled. Infections done via heterosexual relations. 94,000 people living with HIV, and a quarter did not know they even were actually affected. We need to be aware, we need to take control. Women and girls are becoming the main victims. The third section of this play basically is as I said, in order for me to help spread the message, in order to educate you. Here we have a young girl who's recently ended her relationship with her boyfriend, but now she's moved on to another new partner who liked sex. She did not mind. She liked it, but she felt it was a healthy thing to do, doing something that comes naturally. However, one day her teacher gave her an assignment on STDs, sexual transmitted diseases, and she studied more and looked into this, and what she found scared her and horrified her. Her choices were getting smarter every day due to the assignment that the teacher gave them. She was scared of her past. She was scared of the way she behaved because of some of the sex was unprotected. She has not been tested because she is scared of what she will find out. Anyone who engages in risky behavior must be educated. 34 million people worldwide are living with HIV. 9,000 people alone will die from AIDS today. Together we can make a difference. If you engage in risky behavior, would you change after what I have told you in this audio blog? But the question is, are you positive? We then had someone from the States. I did not catch his name. I think it was Larry, and he spoke about how he feels young people today worldwide are engaging in risky behavior. He feels the truth is that we do not actually have the answers, which is a scary thing. Larry felt we need to come together to fight this. There is no cure for AIDS. We are slow to react, and we felt that egos within the health communities, within those researching to fight AIDS, has actually got in the way. And the process to fight this has slowed down, causing huge loss of lives worldwide. He posed this question to us. He mentioned that do not be afraid to ask your partners if they have been tested. I don't want to go on about the event too long, because I know with my audio blogs or video blogs it can run for quite a long length of time. But we'll just go on to the last two parts of the event, and this was actually presented by Dr. Edwin Mapara, who is the public health consultant, speaking on several topics. The first being the Sacred Bodies Project, and the next topic being the FG. Well, actually, the first one was on fighting HIV, and the next one after that was on the Sacred Bodies Project, linked to the FGM campaign and why we must act. Dr. Edwin Mapara was worried a bit about the time that he had left to cover FGM and HIV. He talked about how in 2005 he studied for his masters at the London School of Hygiene and Medicine, and actually did so well. He was asked to actually teach some of his work at the school. Dr. Edwin then talks about his experiences in Botswana, a country bigger than France, but only has a population of around about 2 million people. Dr. Edwin is the Chief Medical Officer in 1997 at Botswana, and he ran a Time to Talk campaign in 1990 in that country. This time he feels is the time to act on the problem of AIDS. In the community over in Botswana, he feels that when he's teaching and educating them, they actually prefer visuals, and this is how it's easier to learn through cultural interpretation. Dr. Edwin talked of the steps of building a foundation of education or education compared to building a house, and he also showed us a map of Botswana and how the Botswana president lost his own son to AIDS, and this pushed more for intervention. Dr. Edwin then talked about FGM and gave us some facts. Now, FGM actually means female genital mutilation, and basically involves the removal of some or all of the female external genitalia. It is also known as female circumcision, which is in fact a very misleading term. The World Health Organization estimates from 110 to 140 million women living today have undergone this ritual, with 2 to 3 million girls per year at risk. FGM is widely practiced in Africa as well as among some Muslim countries like in Malaysia and some areas in the Middle East and India and Pakistan. And yeah, it is actually performed on girls with the average age of 7 to 10 years old. FGM causes widespread trauma, death, and infant mortality. However, FGM practice is going down, and this is through persistent campaigning and education. Dr. Edwin then showed us some slides to explain a graphical representation of what types of FGM are performed on females, and he politely reminded us that some can actually leave the room if they wish. Lastly, at the event we had Shani Hassan, who is the FGM project coordinator, and she was there to tell us more about the Sacred Bodies Project. Now, the Sacred Bodies Project creates awareness and educates and empowers young African women at risk of FGM within the practicing African communities in Lambeth, Southwark and Lewisham, and they provide advice, support and work to promote the rights of victims of FGM. They work closely with faith and community leaders to create awareness on the effects of FGM on victims and their families, and the legal implications of practicing FGM. After Shani spoke, we then had a lovely meal provided free from the organisers of the event, where I got networking with those attending the event. And that wasn't the end of the event. I had to go. There was another part of the event which was a Q&A session, which would have been really interesting, but the event ran for quite a long while. But here's the big question: what did I think of the event? I felt that I was educated. Notice the key word, educated, and I've mentioned that word quite a few times throughout this blog. The event was easy enough to get to. The speakers were all well informed, polite and engaging. They answered all of our questions, and they were inclusive of those who attended. The arrangement of the event was well done. I enjoyed the music, and looking at some of the art and pictures that were presented were also soothing. Plus, it allowed me to reflect on certain issues, being it health issues or mental health issues. I also was glad they gave me the opportunity to speak about the Islam Trick Up social media and its blog. And it was also great to be introduced to big players in the mental health awareness. I do hope we get to hear, I get to go to another event like this soon, and I'm sure I will do.